Senator Dave McCormick from Pennsylvania just got SEC Chairman Paul Atkins to endorse one of the most revolutionary concepts in American finance: super apps. These are platforms where you could buy or sell cryptocurrency alongside traditional stocks while accessing other financial services, all seamlessly on a single app. And Atkins said the key to making this work is unprecedented coordination between the SEC and the CFTC. And he revealed that the two agencies are now meeting once a week to harmonize their approaches. Once a week. The SEC and CFTC, which have operated in separate regulatory silos for decades, are now coordinating weekly to enable innovation like super apps. And Atkins said the goal is to make it as efficient as possible for American firms to compete with foreign firms that don't have this regulatory dichotomy between futures and cash markets. And McCormick asked about the concentration of the stock market in just a handful of companies. And Atkins revealed that the United States now accounts for about half of the total world's capitalization in public markets. And that half is concentrated in a relatively small number of companies, the Magnificent Seven or whatever number we have these days. And the people who get harmed? Average investors who aren't allowed to diversify into private markets. So this week, Senator Dave McCormick questioned SEC Chairman Paul Atkins about prediction markets, super apps, and stock market concentration. Take a look at this, and I'll give you my breakdown at the end.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Ranking Member Warren, and Chairman Atkins, good to see you. The Trump administration's prioritized preserving the United States as a global leader in financial innovations and enabling financial firms to offer new innovative products while also ensuring robust consumer protection. Prediction markets are an area where there appears to be tremendous opportunity, offering price discovery and additional tools to manage risk. Now, I know this falls primarily in the CFTC's jurisdiction, but how is the SEC working with the CFTC to provide greater clarity for U.S. market participants in prediction markets?
Yeah, so that is a huge issue that we're focused on, and so I'm happy to say that Mike Seelig is now the president appointed him to be chairman of the CFTC. Great guy, very competent, and he was in my office, so I can surely say that the two agencies will be harmonized more than ever before, and so we're meeting once a week to do that and with our staffs. And so that's a very important aspect of trying to harmonize. So prediction markets are exactly one thing that where there's overlapping jurisdiction potentially. And you're right, it's mostly, at least currently on the CFTC side, but we need to be harmonized in the way we're addressing this market.
And do you see any rulemaking on the immediate horizon and any thoughts on the need for legislation in those areas?
Well, so we'll see. I mean, we'll see what you all come up with here with respect to clarity. But again, I think we have enough authority. As I said before, a security is a security, regardless, how it is. And some of the nuance with prediction markets and the products depends on wording and what exactly is being done. So anyway, but that just points up because of the potential gaps that the SEC and the CFTC need to be, very well interknit on that.
Okay. Financial innovations moving at a blistering pace in lots of areas, including digital assets. I commend you on your efforts to provide the necessary rules and safeguards for digital assets while we continue to hopefully come forward with legislation on the Clarity Act. You've spoken about your support for super apps, which would allow for seamless side-by-side trading of different asset classes. For example, a user on one platform could buy or sell crypto alongside traditional stocks while accessing other financial services. Would you outline for us how the super apps would increase global competitiveness for U.S. registered financial firms and the consumer protection principles that should guide the approach to super apps?
Oh, well, thank you. Well, it comes again back to harmonization with the CFTC. So here we have two agencies that should be very well knit together, and so that there are no gaps. And as the markets have evolved over the last 40 years, and where there are actors or market participants in both markets, futures and cash markets, it's really incumbent on us to help make this as efficient for them as possible, so that they can compete effectively with foreign or other sorts of firms that were in other jurisdictions. They don't have a dichotomy as between a futures regulator and a cash markets regulator. So that's our goal, is to make it efficient from anywhere from cross margining and portfolio margining, to just what sort of medallion you need to do X, Y, and Z. So the more harmonized we are, the better, more efficient.
Thank you. I'll ask a final question, just squeeze in here on your focus on making IPOs great again. You discussed how raising capital through IPOs should not only be a privilege for larger companies, as the number of IPOs has diminished dramatically. Could you discuss the broader impact on markets and the economy when a handful of companies dominate the S&P 500's market cap?
Yeah, well, that just points up how we now in the United States account for about a half of the total world's capitalization, and now that is on the public markets, and then now that is concentrated on relatively fewer companies, and even the Magnificent Seven or whatever number we have these days. So we, the more diversity that we can get into the public markets, I think the better, because again, the people who are harmed are the folks, average investors who are not allowed to diversify into the private markets, who can suffer because it's much more concentrated in the public markets.
All right, let's talk about what you just heard, because Senator Dave McCormick, former CEO of the world's largest hedge fund, Bridgewater Associates, just asked some of the most sophisticated financial market questions I've seen in a Senate hearing. And SEC Chairman Paul Atkins gave answers that reveal how dramatically the regulatory approach to American financial markets is changing under Trump. Weekly coordination between SEC and CFTC, super apps that integrate crypto and traditional securities, an acknowledgement that stock market concentration is harming average investors who can't access private markets. Let me walk you through what McCormick exposed, because this is about whether American financial firms can compete globally and whether ordinary investors can access the investment opportunities that have historically been reserved for the wealthy. McCormick started with prediction markets. He said, "The Trump administration has prioritized preserving the United States as a global leader in financial innovation and enabling financial firms to offer new, innovative products while also ensuring robust consumer protection." Prediction markets are an area where there appears to be tremendous opportunity, offering price discovery and additional tools to manage risk. Prediction markets. These are markets where people can bet on the outcomes of future events, elections, economic data releases, sporting events, policy decisions. Polymarket and Kalshi are examples, and they serve a real economic function beyond gambling. They aggregate information from thousands of people and produce probability estimates that are often more accurate than expert forecasts. If a prediction market says there's a 70% chance the Fed raises rates next month, that reflects the collective wisdom of people putting real money behind their beliefs. And McCormick noted this falls primarily in the CFTC's jurisdiction, but asked, how is the SEC working with the CFTC to provide greater clarity for U.S. market participants? And Atkins gave a remarkable answer. Mike Seelig is now the president-appointed chairman of the CFTC. Great guy, very competent, and he was in my office. So I can surely say that the two agencies will be harmonized more than ever before. We're meeting once a week to do that with our staffs. Once a week, the SEC chairman and CFTC chairman, along with their staffs, are meeting every single week to coordinate. That's unprecedented. Historically, the SEC and CFTC have operated as separate regulatory kingdoms, overlapping jurisdiction, conflicting rules, different approaches, and financial firms caught in the middle trying to comply with both, but now they're harmonizing, weekly meetings, staff coordination, and the goal is to eliminate gaps and conflicts. And Atkins said prediction markets are exactly one area where there's overlapping jurisdiction potentially, mostly CFTC, but we need to be harmonized in the way we're addressing this market. And McCormick asked about rulemaking and legislation, and Atkins said, we'll see what you all come up with respect to clarity, but I think we have enough authority. A security is a security regardless of how it is. Some of the nuances with prediction markets depend on wording and what exactly is being done, but that just points up because of the potential gaps that the SEC and CFTC need to be very well in tune. A security is a security regardless of how it is. That's Atkins saying the existing securities laws can handle prediction markets if they involve securities. The question is always, is this particular product a security or a commodity? And the answer depends on the specific structure and wording, which is why SEC-CFTC coordination is critical. And then McCormick turned to super apps. He said, you've spoken about your support for super apps, which would allow for seamless side-by-side trading of different asset classes. For example, a user on one platform could buy or sell crypto alongside traditional stocks while accessing other financial services. How would super apps increase global competitiveness for U.S. registered financial firms, and what consumer protection principles should guide the approach? Super apps. This is the game changer. Right now, if you want to trade stocks, you use one app: Robinhood, E-Trade, Fidelity. If you want to trade crypto, you use a different app: Coinbase, Kraken, Gemini. If you want to trade futures or options, you might use a third app. Each platform is siloed because of the regulatory structure. The SEC regulates securities, the CFTC regulates commodities and derivatives, and never the twain shall meet. But in Asia, super apps like WeChat and Alipay let users do everything in one place: messaging, payments, investing, shopping, banking, all integrated. And McCormick is asking whether American financial firms can build the equivalent for investing. One app where you can buy Bitcoin, buy Apple stock, trade oil futures, access money market funds, all seamlessly without having to transfer money between platforms or manage multiple accounts. And Atkins said this comes back to harmonization with the CFTC. Here we have two agencies that should be very well knit together so that there are no gaps. As the markets have evolved over the last 40 years and actors or market participants operate in both futures and cash markets, it's incumbent on us to help make this as efficient for them as possible so they can compete effectively with foreign firms in other jurisdictions. They don't have a dichotomy between a futures regulator and a cash markets regulator. Other jurisdictions. Atkins is acknowledging that American financial firms are at a competitive disadvantage because they have to comply with two separate regulatory regimes while competitors in other countries deal with one integrated regulator. And the goal of super apps is to close that gap by making the SEC and CFTC work together so seamlessly that the distinction becomes invisible to users. And Atkins explained what that means practically, from cross-margining and portfolio margining to what sort of medallion you need to do X, Y, and Z. The more harmonized we are, the better and more efficient. Cross-margining and portfolio margining. These are technical terms for how collateral is calculated when you have positions in multiple markets. Right now, if you have a stock position with the SEC-regulated broker and a futures position with a CFTC-regulated broker, your collateral requirements are calculated separately, even though your overall portfolio risk might be lower because the positions hedge each other. Portfolio margining means calculating risk across the entire portfolio, regardless of which regulatory silo each position falls in. And that reduces capital requirements and makes trading more efficient. And the medallion reference is about licenses and registrations. Right now, a firm might need a broker-dealer registration from the SEC and a Futures Commission merchant registration from the CFTC, two separate licenses with overlapping requirements. Harmonization could mean one integrated registration that covers both. And then McCormick asked about IPOs and market concentration. He noted that the number of IPOs has diminished dramatically, and a handful of companies dominate the S&P 500's market cap, and asked Atkins about the broader impact on markets and the economy. And Atkins gave a number that should be staggering to anyone who thinks about global finance. The United States now accounts for about half of the total world's capitalization in public markets, and that is concentrated in relatively fewer companies, even the Magnificent Seven or whatever number we have these days. Half of the world's public market capitalization. The United States stock market is worth more than the stock markets of Europe, Asia, and the rest of the world combined. That's extraordinary, and it's concentrated in just a handful of companies: Apple, Microsoft, Nvidia, Amazon, Alphabet, Meta, Tesla, the Magnificent Seven that Atkins references. Those 7 companies represent such a large percentage of U.S. market cap that they're a significant percentage of global market cap. And Atkins said, the more diversity we can get into the public markets, the better. Because again, the people who are harmed are the folks, average investors who are not allowed to diversify into private markets, who can suffer because it's much more concentrated in the public markets. Average investors who are not allowed to diversify into private markets. That's the key problem. The best investment opportunities, the highest growth companies, the most innovative startups are staying private longer. And SEC rules restrict access to private markets to accredited investors, people with over $1 million in net worth or $200,000 in annual income. Everyone else is locked out, stuck investing in a public market that's increasingly concentrated in a handful of mega-cap companies that have already grown so large their best growth years are behind them, and Atkins' solution is making IPOs great again, getting more companies to go public so ordinary investors can access growth opportunities without needing to be wealthy enough to invest in private markets. Super apps are part of that solution. Tokenization is part of that solution. And SEC CFTC harmonization is the regulatory foundation that makes all of it possible. Like, subscribe, and share this everywhere, because Senator Dave McCormick just got SEC Chairman Paul Atkins to endorse super apps that would let Americans trade crypto and stocks on the same platform, enabled by unprecedented weekly coordination between the SEC and CFTC. And Atkins revealed that the U.S. accounts for half of the world's public market capitalization, but it's concentrated in a handful of companies, harming average investors who can't access private markets where the best growth opportunities are. This is the most dramatic regulatory shift in American financial markets in decades.